This presentation is called Electrify Your Life, and it's really focused on, so when I retired from full-time work, you always, these changes in your life, you always ask yourself, what am I doing now? And I resolved to do everything that I can do to address climate change. And that is what I try to do. So what I'm going to share with you is an overview of how all of us can incrementally decarbonize our lives. And this is just focused on your own home and what you do in your home. So it's not food. It doesn't connect to food, but it is pretty much everything other than food.
Great. We're looking forward to it. Thanks.
So let's see. I can make this a little bigger. I'm assuming you can see this. Okay. So
I think if you go down to the bottom and click on the little, it looks like a desk.
This little guy here.
Yes, try that.
Ah, oops.
There you go.
I'll go back one. Okay, so I'm going to focus on two sectors, well, really three. So electricity, which is 25% of US emissions, transportation, which is now 29%, and in this slice, this 13% wedge, I'm just going to focus on residential. So buildings, this is commercial, it's called commercial and residential, but it's really buildings. Buildings emit 13%. Transportation is more than twice that. And electricity is about twice that. So all of us can decarbonize our own uses by converting our end uses to clean electricity. And those are heating, water heating, cooking, laundry, lawn care, and transportation. This is a slide I borrowed from EPA, and I just love this because it summarizes everything in a really lovely way. So the supply is in these green, this kind of green coating. So this is clean energy features, and you'll see this home is powered by solar, on-site solar. Energy efficiency is noted by these orange colored features. And then end uses, the clean all electric features are this kind of burgundy color. And then they also have transportation. So this is really kind of summarizes, this slide kind of summarizes everything that I'm going to try to go through with you. So the first step is, of course, making sure that your electricity usage is clean. And you can do that in several different ways. You can install solar on your own home. In Philly, we have a wonderful Solarize Philly program, which has been really successful. It's the nation's largest Solarize program. And we've, through that program, almost 1,000 homeowners have put solar on their roofs. In New Jersey, I don't know if any of your listeners are from New Jersey, but New Jersey's got fabulous programs, and this is the web link to them. And Delaware, of course, has really excellent programs as well. We still have in place a 26% federal tax credit for installation of solar. And that we're looking for that to remain in place. There's some chance that it'll go back up to 30%, but right now it's remaining at 26, which is really excellent. I've done this on a home that I own, and the federal tax credit is very, very it's a big incentive. It's really very useful. If you can't or don't want to install solar, you can lease it. And this is one leasing company that I'm familiar with. There are several in our region that are working, and Posigen is a company that I have a lot of confidence in them and feel really fine about recommending them. The interesting thing about Posigen is they combine energy efficiency and solar. So when they take your home, when they lease solar to you, they do it in a way that maximizes energy efficiency first, and then they guarantee savings to you as a customer. So it's a very interesting model that they use. And then, of course, for listeners in New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, community solar is an option. We do not have community solar in Pennsylvania, but our surrounding states, all of the surrounding states do have it. So that's another option. If none of these appeal to you, you can, of course, purchase renewable energy from a supplier, a third-party supplier, like the Energy Co-op. That's one of many, many suppliers. This is a link to the New Jersey list, I can give you a link to the Pennsylvania list if you like. So the co-op is just one of many renewable energy suppliers. They do offer some locally sourced, Pennsylvania sourced power that is 100% renewable, and it is a local company. So actually a nonprofit corporation. This is one of my favorite slides of all time because it really exemplifies the lesson here, which is that when you're using renewable energy to power any load, it's critically important to reduce the load first. So if you want to put solar power on a building, solar is a lot cheaper than it used to be, but it is still more expensive than energy efficiency. So the cleanest, as this says, the cleanest, safest, and most cost-effective form of energy is in fact energy efficiency. It also creates more jobs than any other energy source. Solar is a very close second in all of these categories, but energy efficiency is too often overlooked and really needs to be done first. So in Pennsylvania, all of our electric utilities are required by law to provide energy efficiency services. It's Act 129, and PECO does provide a really good energy audit. It's probably not adequate, but it is a great start, and I recommend it to everyone. And the PECO Smart Ideas programs are also very strong, very good programs, possibly not adequate, but a really good start. So I would start here if you're a PECO customer. If you're in New Jersey or Delaware, both of these states have very robust program sets. And if the Build Back Better bill gets going again, I'm hoping that it will still contain a lot of federal tax credits for energy efficiency as well as solar. So now we'll dive into electric homes. Electric homes are not new, as you can see here from the fashions of the day. They got their start back in the 70s, and they were really all the rage in the 70s. I'm sure many of you remember them. I do certainly remember them as a kid, seeing all these ads. They even had a little medallion home label here for an all-electric home. And Ronald Reagan in Southern California was a spokesperson for this industry before he became president, of course. And he was, I don't know if he lived in one, but ostensibly that's probably the story. And this little lady on my left is my personal favorite. She's inspecting how clean electricity is, you know. which is certainly a feature. And then this is a wonderful, wonderful ad here. We're having more fun now that we've moved into a modern total electric home. So back in the 70s, this was all the rage. And it did sweep the southern part of the United States, replacing coal in many cases. In the Northwest, of course, they have very heavy hydro from Canada. So there's a tremendous amount of hydroelectric power here. And then, of course, in parts of the Southwest. But in New England and the mid-Atlantic states, we're still very heavily fossil fuel based. So Pennsylvania still is principally gas heating. We do have some penetration of electric heat, but it's principally gas and fuel oil. So let's start with heating. Home heating is still the biggest use for home energy in most homes. And this is not my expertise, so I'll just give you a kind of a brief overview here. But heat pumps have significantly improved. This is a very standard air source heat pump, and one of the things that has improved with this equipment is they now routinely use variable speed blowers and a variable refrigerant flow. And this adapts to outdoor temperature much more carefully than the previous and older versions did. There were a lot of issues with the first generation of this equipment. Like many new technologies, the first generation is often imperfect, but now this equipment is much better. It's much more efficient. It produces greater comfort and does so at a lower cost. So cold climate heat pumps are in use in our climate and all the way through the United States into upper New England. And people talk about, well, so this is an air source heat pump. This is certainly the least cost of these options. A ground source heat pump, a lot of people who are thinking about new construction consider ground source. Ground source requires excavation, either drilling wells or a radial system of laying pipes and tubing. So it does require a lot more infrastructure, if you will, than air source. And geothermal, people use this term geothermal, but to be frank, geothermal really refers to the kind of heat pump and system that you get from a volcano or something of that sort, you know, where you're really tapping into an extraordinary source of heat underground. In our region, we really use air source and ground source, and not so much geothermal. People call ground source geothermal sometimes, but it's really true geothermal is a different animal. So what's really important to understand about heat pumps is they don't create heat, they move heat. So a heat pump is moving, it's capturing heat even from cold air. It's capturing heat in air and it is moving that heat. It's converting it to sensible heat in your home during the winter. And then in the summer, it has a reversing valve. In the summer, it's taking heat out of your home and it is dumping it outside. So it is converting the heat that is in the air using the delta, using the temperature difference between outside and inside. And it is taking advantage of that and converting it to sensible heat using refrigerants. So it is taking advantage of a change of state. So moving a liquid to a vapor and a vapor to a liquid. So it is not a heating source. So it's not combusting anything. It's using electricity to power this process, but it is not, there's no combustion involved. So a heat pump heats in winter by extracting heat from the outside, and it does the opposite in the summertime. It extracts heat from your home and moves it to the outside. These are photos of a system, a retrofit system in a home of a friend of ours. This just shows you what he's doing is he's using the existing duct system in his home to supply the heat. And so if you have a forced air system in your home, you don't have to add any additional ductwork. You can simply use that existing duct system to transport the warm air. And your system, your retrofit would look something like this, depending upon the size of your house. So this is the condensate line that is taking the condensate outside. And this is the compressor outdoors. So it is using a fan. It is similar in some ways to a central air conditioning system, a traditional air conditioning system. It's taking a lot of moisture, humidity out of your house in the summertime. So that is pulling humidity as well as warm air out of your home in the summer. So it's dehumidifying in the summertime. Another type of heat pump system is commonly called a mini split. Mini splits are ductless. They don't require ducts, and they look something like this. This is a mini split wall hung unit near the ceiling of a room. They, depending on the size of the room, they may only heat and cool one room, but it depends on the configuration of your home and the size of the room. So they can heat and cool a very large space if that space is open. It depends on, as I say, the configuration. And they're very useful in homes that don't have existing ductwork. And this is an outdoor, this is the compressor outdoors with the lines that you see. It's a pretty common, Fujitsu is a very common brand. This is a kind of system that's sometimes called a PTAC or a PTHP. These are often in hotel rooms. I'm sure you've seen these. It requires a very large opening in the wall because it does not have any ducts. It just slots into that opening and it heats and cools the room. So it's very similar to a mini split, except it doesn't have any connection to an outdoor unit. It's just all one unit. And these are generally, they can be used. I've seen them used actually in apartment buildings. So you do see PTACs or this kind of heat pump in a relatively small multifamily building unit or a hotel room. That's where you find most of them. And these are just specs. You want to pay attention to the efficiency rating of a system, your seasonal energy efficiency rating or SEER. You should have at least 15 SEER or higher. You want to go above the Energy Star level wherever you can. Energy Star is no longer the highest available quality or rating. You need to go above that if you can. So this just kind of re-encapsulates some of what I've just said. And then this is just a photograph of a very, again, a Fujitsu system. This is a very common kind of installation that you'll see in your own neighborhood, I'm sure, as you walk around. So heat pump water heaters, the cost installed really varies based let me go back here to the heaters. The cost installed of heat pumps, as this range indicates, from 5 to 25,000, is really true. It depends on the size of the system and where you are and who your installer is. I had one of these systems, a conventional air source heat pump installed, and a mini split installed in a rental property that I own, and the total bill was about $8,000 for both of these. I recognize that's a little low, given most people's experience, but I just wanted to say that that was my experience. So it really depends on who your installer is. And now heat pump water heaters. There are heat pump water heaters as well, and they use similar technology to the heat pump. The cost installed, the range is about 15 to 2,500, and it is more expensive than a conventional system, but it will last a lot longer and is going to be using a lot less power to maintain. So I'm going to switch gears and talk for a second about cooking. Electricity, cooking with electricity is not new, but what is relatively new is induction cooking. Induction doesn't, it's not conventional. It's not, what it's doing is creating a magnetic field to warm the bottom of a metal pan. So it is not combusting anything. It is using electricity. So there is no combustion product. There's no ash. There's no, it's a totally different process. And it requires a magnetic connection. So if you're using aluminum pans or all copper pans, it will not work. So if for some people, you'll have to modify, you'll have to just switch out the pots and pans that you're using. So it will work with cast iron, enameled cast iron, or stainless steel. So these metals conduct magnetism. And so to test your pots and see if it'll work, use a magnet. And if the magnet sticks, then it'll work on an induction cooktop. This was actually on my Christmas list. And so my starting point was getting some new stainless steel pots, because I do have some copper pots that I will no longer be able to use. So I'm ready for this new adventure. Washer and dryer, of course, many of you are already, I'm sure, using front loading electric washer and dryers. These are fabulous, have many, many advantages. They use less water. They require less time and energy to dry your clothes. Clothes will last longer because you're no longer cooking them. And it's far more energy efficient. Lawn care is really a no-brainer. We switched to all electric lawn equipment some time ago, and frankly, it's so much more fun to mow the lawn now. So we have, we don't have this brand. We have we have this brand, Cobalt, which we really love. And we have 2 batteries, so we can, that way we never run out of power. We always have a battery that's charged. This is, we take care of more than 1 lawn. So this is, you know, just an example of your lawnmower, a weed whacker, and a chainsaw. There's, you know, a snowblower. There's a lot of this equipment. And this is one brand that I'm familiar with, and I really love it. It's really great. These are not my cars. This is a photo taken by a friend of mine, and these are her cars. So she's got a Chevy Bolt and a Tesla Model Y. But obviously, the big thing to think about is electric vehicles. And if you're replacing your vehicle, or you're thinking about buying an additional car, please give this very careful consideration. So there are lots of choices: hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and then just plain old EVs. The future is this bottom one, the all-electric. And these are some examples. There are many, many more of these vehicles coming to, you know, your next door neighbor. The more I walk around my neighborhood, the more of these I see. So many, many advantages. No emissions, no local emissions. If you are using renewable electricity, then you're powering your car with renewable energy. If you have solar on your own home, you can drive a solar powered car. You can charge at home. You don't have to ever go to a gas station again. And you save a lot of money on fuel. There's much less maintenance because there's no combustion and there's no oil, there's no grime to get stuck everywhere. And then, as Marion says, they're fun to drive. So this is hopefully in my near future. And you don't have an emissions sticker either. So that's kind of fun and different. You can charge them in very different ways. You can charge them really at home. This is using a 110 volt regular outlet, and you would have to do this overnight. A level 2 charger, that's a level 1. A level 2 charger is a 240 volt, charges much faster. And that's really, level 1 and level 2 is really adequate unless you're going a really long distance and you need a faster charging capability. This is what it looks like mounted on the outside of your home, and either of these images. But if you're charging with an extension cord from inside your house, this is what you would be using something like this. Again, in my neighborhood, I passed someone who was doing this. He was just running an extension cord from his house and had it kind of across the sidewalk with a sign telling people to be careful. And he had a nice cover for it so people wouldn't, inadvertently disturb it. But you do see many more of these happening. And of course, this is a charging station at a grocery store. This happens to be Weaver's Way. And you're already seeing these popping up everywhere. And this is a level 2 charger, which will work for any EV. Tesla has its own, high, these are level 3 chargers, superchargers. They're much faster, much higher voltage. And EVgo also does fast charging. So a number of different brands are doing fast charging. Tesla right now is proprietary. So if you don't own a Tesla, you cannot plug in to one of their chargers. You would have to look for EVgo or another brand. These brands are universal. They'll charge any car, but Tesla is proprietary. So, switching to EVs is going to take concentration. because you have to overcome range anxiety and turn that into range awareness. And it is certainly best to have a car with at least 200-mile range. For long distance, if you're doing long distance driving, you'll need a car with a fast charging option. And right now, that's why Tesla is so popular, because Tesla is the car with the best network of fast superchargers and the fastest charging. So it depends on your needs. So in thinking about this, if you've got 2 vehicles in your family, think about swapping out one of them or replacing one of them with an electric vehicle, and that'll be your around town car. And you can save your internal combustion engine for longer trips. If you're renting, I'm working now, beginning to work more now with apartment buildings and apartment complexes that are wanting to accommodate EVs and install EV charging. So you're going to see a rapid change, and these will become very common in apartment buildings and parking garages and public spaces of that sort. So this is a great website. Plugstar is a really great website to find charging stations and also descriptions of cars. And as I mentioned, this is a time this year when a lot more companies are coming out with EVs. So you see all kinds of luxury models coming out to compete with Tesla, and a lot more standard car coming out to compete with Chevy. So you'll see a huge range this year in 2022, a much bigger range of choices. Something I don't want to dwell on, but just want to mention is that PECO has come out with a time of use price. This is a time of use rate, and they've done it, they've been required to do it by the Public Utility Commission for EV infrastructure. So what it does, you'll see right here, if you go on the time of use rate, if you use electricity during peak, so peak is 2 to 6 p.m. on weekdays. So if you use electricity during that peak period, you'll be paying a lot more. If you use on off-peak, which is any other time, you'll be paying less than you currently pay. And if you use electricity during super off-peak, which is midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning every day, you'll be paying much, much less than you currently pay. And this is the overnight charging time that I mentioned. If you want to purchase an EV and you want to charge that car overnight, you would get a charging, you would arrange for the charging to click on at midnight and charge for 6 hours so that you could pay less than 3 cents. Well, about 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a much lower rate than you're currently paying. And PECO has, so this is just an example of how this works. If you have solar on your own home, you'll save even more. This, I don't have it here. Here it is. So on PECO's website, if you go to your own account on PECO's website, you can find out whether you will save money on the time of use rate or not. They have a nice little pricing tool on, if you go to your own account on PECO's site, you can just plug in your account number and you'll find out whether or not you can save money on the time of use rate. Some people will save and other people will not. So it's really important for you to try this out and check out your own house. And I think with that, I'll just go to questions.
Liz, thanks so much. I'll bring you back. Can you, there you go, great. Who has questions for Liz? There was you covered so much. So much.
This is Chuck. I have a question for Liz. Liz, when the Electric Choice program first came out, it was pretty easy to go to the sites and choose a supplier, and often a Pennsylvania-based supplier. What advice do you give now to residents who are going to choose a supplier, and particularly as it regards whether they're a supplier providing wind energy inside or outside of Pennsylvania?
To be frank, I think the important thing is to buy renewable energy, and everybody has their own decision-making process about what price point is right for them. So do what feels right for you, given your budget, your household budget. I think it's more important to buy renewable energy and to buy as much of it as you can afford. So supply 100% if you can. And the place that I tend to go for this list is the Office of Consumer Advocate, VOCA.gov. The PA, Office of Consumer Advocate, has a comprehensive list of electricity suppliers in every jurisdiction across the state. And that is current and accurate. It may not be as current as we'd like for it to be, but it is, it is a reliable source of information. So I would go there. There are a couple of other lists that are kept pretty well as also, but I don't think, to be frank, what's really important is reducing carbon. So whether you're buying in-state wind or out-of-state wind, if you can get wind at the right price, just buy as much of it as you can.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Liz, a couple comments and then a question. On energy saving, one comment is if you can avoid it, don't use your dryer. There's only 2 of us now, our kids are gone. So we never use our dryer. Now we have a property where we have a clothesline, so in the summer we can put them out. But even if it's raining or in the wintertime, we just use clothes racks in the house because it helps humidify the house.
Yeah,
and,
man,
after dry your clothes that way. So that's an easy way to save energy.
Absolutely.
The other thing is keep in mind that every refrigerator or air conditioner is a heat pump.
Yes.
It's pumping energy from a low level up to a high level. What we're talking about here is reverse cycle heat pumps, where you take that same air conditioner and reverse the cycle, as you said.
Yes.
On the standpoint of solar roofs, we kind of drank the Tesla Kool-Aid. We both have Tesla cars, and we just installed a Tesla roof, not solar panels, but a roof, and we love it. It looks good and it works well. But you didn't mention battery storage. If you use solar panels or a solar roof, you can install battery storage, and especially if you have time of use, like Pico does now, you can fill the batteries up at night and then use them during the daytime.
Absolutely.
To offset the power. Now, we did run into a problem there because we, several years ago started buying renewable energy, and we use Clearview, I think it is. But I had planned on, we put in 2 power walls instead of buying an emergency generator. We bought 2 power walls in case our electricity goes out, which it does a lot in our area because we have a lot of trees. But I'd also planned to use those power walls to, as I said, to store energy in off-peak hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't found a sustainable energy supplier that has off-peak. And I can understand that because, you know, the solar, they're not generating power by solar or by solar, at least in off peak. Do you know if there are any energy suppliers, sustainable energy suppliers that have off peak rates?
I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. I don't think there is one currently.
Yeah. I don't. I've searched and I haven't found one either. So
Yeah.
I might have to bite the bullet and go back to Pico because I would. It would be a great advantage to have off peak power.
I think,
rates.
yeah, particularly with your batteries, I
Yeah.
think it would make a big difference for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because as you just said, you can be charging your batteries completely at night using this extraordinarily low rate,
Yeah.
and then using that power all day long, and then
Yeah.
just do that every day. There's
Yeah.
no reason why you can't. So the battery storage is a phenomenal kind of a multiplier asset. It's a very big asset.
Yeah. One further comment, not to hog all the time, but
Sure.
I've had my Tesla for 3 years, and the only expenditures I had is for inspection without emissions. I've not had a single cost associated
Wow.
with that car,
Wow,
except
that's
for when I was showing my wife how to back it out of the garage quickly, and I ripped the mirror off. But that has nothing to do with the electric car.
It's wonderful. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Us too. We have a Tesla and have had no, other than the regular maintenance, no cost whatsoever.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Dave Bushnell, you've got a question?
I do, Liz. Some of the folks on this call, I think, probably know Eric Sauter since he was on the board of Power and Light. Eric is in Lancaster. I'm from Lancaster, and Eric has started a group called Regen All, and one of the priorities that he's hoping that'll be launched with that is convergence to solar panels. My question is this, Liz. I understand somewhere a year or so ago, I was researching transitional towns, and I think Media, PA is a transitional town, and they had must have been a series of educational experiences for people who were interested in solar. And it was from that then that about 50 households in that smaller community got panels. So my question is, are you aware of any places or people, you know, like in Lancaster? I mean, this is a wonderful thing, but, you know, to get the word out by this kind of a venue to people's interest in getting them past some of the, you know, questions and not having to have a salesperson, you know, there to try to sell them something. Would you think that it would be advantageous for a community like Lancaster to try to draw as many people into an event or a series of events that would, and then you know, educate them as a group?
That process now is called Solarize.
Okay.
And it is a model that's been running for a number of years all across the country. And essentially what it is bulk purchasing. So neighbors or communities of any size come together and they select one or more suppliers that are vetted and approved. So they're very high quality. In Philly, the way this works is the suppliers are all licensed. They're all, you know, highly, very high quality, and they have to sign a contract with the group. And the advantage of the bulk purchasing for the supplier is he's got a number of customers. You know, he's got this ready-made pool of customers. And the advantage for the customers is they can hold this supplier accountable to a higher level of performance than a single customer can. So you get a lower price and higher quality. And another part of this that I love for communities is that you all are a bunch of leaders. This is a group of leaders. And there are many people in your community right next door who don't have the confidence or the knowledge that you have. And they will come together with you because they trust you. You know, they don't necessarily trust the solar contractor, but they trust you. And they'll overcome their hesitation. They'll overcome their resistance and come together in a community buying effort like a Solarize program. So there's a nonprofit in the United States that's operating here in Pennsylvania called Solar United Neighbors, SUN. And Henry McKay is the main staff person. I can send that information to Courtney. And I'm sure that he'd love to talk with you. He works, you know, kind of one community, several communities at a time, and he pulls a group of people together. It can be as few as a dozen or as many as, you know, however many, and then pulls people together and goes through this process. So that's what I did on a property that I own, and I found it, you know, really flawless. It was just really nice.
I don't want to take up too much time, but how big of an educational event are you talking about? Are you talking about like one evening, or would it be a series of?
I think it's probably a couple. I don't know for certain how many webinars Henry runs, but I would think it would be at least two. Okay. You probably have to introduce people to it and then let them think about it, and then come back and let them ask all the questions that they have. So it probably would take two. I don't know if it's more than that, but I can put you in touch with him.
Thanks. Joy Baxter has her hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. I just wanted to note a couple of things. First, we don't drive that much. And I was on a Facebook group and trying to promote electric cars. I don't currently have one. And somebody asked, is it environmentally better for me to keep, like if you don't drive a lot, to keep my car or to get an electric car? And I recently found a tool where you can actually input how much you drive and get that determination. And that's, I'll put it in the chat later. I can't remember right now. But even for me not driving a lot, it's still better to get an electric car, you know, for the overall environmental thing. So just wanted to put that out there. And then I have to plug the Clean Energy Co-op. So another option for people who can't do solar on their own home is to help to basically invest in solar projects and develop solar projects in our community. Using the Clean Energy Co-op, you become a member, then you're eligible to invest. And we develop projects on nonprofit and community organizations, community businesses. So that's another option if you can't do solar on your own home. Since community solar is not an option, you can at least invest in solar that way.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
And I put it in the chat, but makebenproud.com is also a good way to look for renewable energy suppliers. And it's all 100% electric, 100% renewable. And they put out very clearly, if it's important to you, where the electricity comes from.
That's great.
And I love the EPA slide. So I'll contact you to get that.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Liz tonight? She is such a great resource and it's so much wonderful information. And you guys, Dave, Joy asked just great, and Ron, great questions. Really good. And Chuck. Okay, so if there's nobody, I actually have a question. And so Liz, I am unclear and am unable to explain to people how I can buy renewable energy from California from wherever, and it ends up in my house. And so there's a level of distrust. I was talking to Joy Berge, who has always been a proponent of RECs for a long time. And she said in her mind that they have fallen out of favor. So when you're talking about buying clean energy, are you talking about RECs? Can you break that down to a very basic level?
Sure. So in Pennsylvania, we are buying from a grid. So our grid is called PJM, which is Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland. This grid actually supports all or part of 17 states. So it's all of the mid-Atlantic, parts of the Midwest, goes all the way down to North Carolina. So it's a huge region. This is a grid that started in Philadelphia. It was started by PECO many, many years ago. And then for reliability reasons, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. PJM is like a pool. So think of it as a lake. So all of the electrons go into this pool, which is a massive grid. So when you're buying electricity, you are not purchasing electrons. So the only way for you as an individual customer to be sure that you're getting a specific supply is to put it on your roof. Because electricity is like water. It follows the path of least resistance. It will go the shortest distance. So it's coming off the roof into your home, into your wire. And any additional is going to your neighbor. So it's really, think of it like water. But otherwise, you're buying from the grid. So when you are buying RECs, you're not buying the electrons. A REC is a renewable energy credit or certificate. You are buying so in the market of electricity, there are different products. So a kilowatt hour is split into different attributes, if you will. So the renewable energy attribute of that supply is split off, and that's what the REC is. It's the renewable energy aspect of that energy. It's not the energy itself.
Okay.
Does that help at all?
That's helpful.
So you're buying the renewable part of it, but you're not buying the electron.
Okay, but if I buy renewable energy from somebody in California or Texas, that's coming into my pond.
No. The grid itself. So if you go on Google and look for, just say, give me a map of PJM, the map of PJM. Our grid right now is very specific to these all or part of 17 states. It does not include Texas. So if you're buying, if you're buying an attribute from Texas, you are supporting the generation of that supply in Texas, but that's not connected to your grid.
That is helpful. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. I think with, to be frank, the infrastructure bill invests a massive amount of money in transmission and what is needed in this country. So as you all know, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, this huge band in the middle of the country is the wind resource. That's the wind beast that we have. And then we have two more on the coast. So we have offshore wind on the East Coast and the West Coast. So the offshore wind resource is going to be coming in to, Pennsylvania. So even though Pennsylvania doesn't have a lot of coastline, we don't really touch the ocean in any way. We're close enough so that we're going to be getting some of that offshore wind resource from the ocean, and we're also going to be getting a little bit of it from Lake Erie eventually. So we will be getting new renewable generation, new wind generation in the next 3 years, I would say. Whether we ever get North Dakota wind or Texas wind remains to be seen. That's, you know, not something I can predict.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I want to honor our time together. Thank you all for showing up in this sort of unusual week of our typical mainline Interfaith Power and Light night. We do have another program that we're planning, working with Penn Environment, that we hope is going to be sometime in January, and we will be in touch about that. If you have program ideas, be in touch with any of us who are on the planning team, Chuck or Pam or Jerry Tootin or myself. But I especially want to thank Liz for coming out tonight on this almost snowy, but not quite snowy night. So thank you so much for all your good information. We are so grateful, and we're going to try and live more electric lives. How's that?
And we get copies of Liz's slides?
Yes, I'd be happy to send them. I'll send them to Courtney.
Great. Thanks. All right, friends. We'll see you soon. Take care and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Liz.